Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Phil Arnold, the head teacher at Avanti Hall School, a state school based in Exeter for children from ages 4 all the way to 16. As someone who's spent his life in education within mainstream schools, Phil has agreed to join us to chat about the practicalities and challenges of incorporating outdoor education into state schools and the benefits of doing so when everything comes together to allow it to happen. Thanks for joining us today, Phil.
It's a pleasure.
In our first episode, we spoke to Chev about who's one of our directors, about how he perceives the attitudes towards outdoor education to have changed during his time within education. I'd like to kind of contrast this with your opinion as someone who started as a history teacher.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, before rising through the ranks at a number of secondary state schools and is now a head teacher. Do you think it's more on the radar than it was when you began?
I think, yes, but it'd be... Outdoor education means lots of different things to different people.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of an interesting perspective from myself in my role of what I perceive outdoor education to be and look like, what parents might perceive it to look like, what people at the outdoors group seem to look like. So for me, there's different layers to it. You've got the forest school bit, where children are learning quite specific skills in the forest school.
Firelighting, whittling.
Yeah, exactly. And but then you've got other elements of outdoor education where you can take the curriculum outdoors. You can do science lessons outdoors, and that's been going on for years.
Yeah.
But I suppose there's more of a need for it now. I think the last 2 years particularly sort of meant that
with
when
COVID.
Yeah, children were facing a lot of screens and having a lot of time in front of, indoors. But and I think that sort of creates a better argument. We need to be outdoors more because we saw what happened when children were inside for long periods of time. It wasn't good for their mental health. We know that outdoors can invigorate lots of different stimuli within your brain to help with having a much better outlook on life. But also you've also got the sensory elements to being outdoors as well. So children with special educational needs particularly really benefit from that. So I think going back to your question, yes, it is far more on the radar.
Yeah.
It's more on the radar than it was 3 years ago, let alone 20 years ago. And I think the pandemic has had a huge influence on that. But I also think that there's a lot of pressure on schools to fit in everything else.
Yes.
But controversially, I don't mind the new Ofsted framework because I think if you as a school are clear on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to put across for the children, then actually the framework fits that. Because if you're trying to prioritise mental health, you're trying to prioritise how you're going to use outside environments, then that's a huge thing.
Can I jump in to say, I don't know about the new change in the framework. Can you, just for someone that might be listening that doesn't know, like if someone who's got kids in school, for example, what that kind of change has been?
I think that the previous framework was very much built on school outcomes.
Okay.
What your school got the previous academic year was nearly going to be the guidance of what Ofsted grading you were going to get, no matter what the school looked like at the time.
Okay.
And that may be a little bit cynical, but that's sort of how it felt at the time. You get the feeling now that the new framework where they're looking at what they term the quality of education.
Okay.
So they're looking at the curriculum and how that's sequenced and how that's then... So it's called the intent of the curriculum, what you're there to try and put across.
Okay. Which sounds more positive.
I think, well, if you've got a good rationale for why you've done this within your curriculum, particularly how you're building knowledge, how you're building the core foundations for each discrete subject, whether it's primary or secondary, then you can say that. And I can say that to an Ofsted inspector, but then they want to go out and they want to test it, and they call that the implementation. They want to go out and feel and talk to the children, talk to the teachers.
So if you're straying from a traditional approach, that's fine as long as you can prove it working in reality, do you think?
I suppose so. I suppose most maintained schools will follow the national curriculum. In primary, there's no exemption, as far as I'm aware of, but from Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2 national curriculum assessment frameworks. Yeah. So as a strong emphasis on phonics, on English, literacy and mathematics. But then as you go through up the different year groups to Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, you have a little bit more freedom because you can choose the curriculum you want to study.
Okay.
And my school's kind of unique because we're an all through, so we do have reception age children going all the way through to the end of year 11. So when you're talking about that curriculum journey, most secondary schools will do their sort of 5-year Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, sometimes building into Key Stage 5. But we can build a 12-year journey where you're mapping in, you know, what's being learnt in science.
Yeah.
Well, what are they learning in reception? What are they learning in year 1? And how can we build on what they're studying so it's not terrifying when they get to year 9 and 10?
Yeah.
And so from that element, for me, talking about how you're interweaving outdoor learning, actually, if you give subject leaders an opportunity to say, let's use our site to really unpick what you want to deliver and how you can benefit from, you know, I'm very blessed. I've got a 6-acre site, which is
with some really beautiful woodland.
Absolutely, and you can weave so much of the curriculum into that. Yeah,
which I guess leads me. I was going to ask what your peers and the teachers within your school, how do they feel about weaving that, using the outside grounds outside of the classroom? Are they positive about it, or do they find it overwhelming?
I can't speak on their behalf.
No.
But I'll speak on my behalf because I've tried it.
Yeah.
Because I think it's important I still teach. I think head teachers should teach to some degree. So I decided, right, I'm going to do a lesson outside. I just want to go.
What subject was it?
History.
Okay.
I don't know what I was doing. I just took the kids out. We thought, this is nice, but it loses what you're comfortable with.
Yes.
And that's the thing for teachers. I'm sure we would all love to go outside and teach.
Yeah.
But we need a framework or we have routines in school which are there for the children.
Yeah. And
the children need those routines so they feel safe, they feel secure. And as soon as you go outside and you as a teacher go, right, what am I going to do here?
Yeah.
The children panic.
Because they can sense
that we don't know what we're doing. So there's an element of that, and it has to be really carefully planned in.
Yeah.
So last week I saw our year 11 science. I just saw them going off with quadrangles. They were going off to measure some stuff in the stream that we've got down the bottom.
Yeah.
And I just thought, that's purposeful, because they've got that. They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And that's part of the curriculum that they're going to build in. It's learning outside. They're going to spend an hour.
Yeah.
Field work, sampling. And we can do that on our school grounds.
I guess science is probably quite an easy one at all ages, isn't it? Because with your younger ones, you can do natural stuff like bugs and weather and weather observations. Nice, easy one. But I guess some of the other subjects present more of a challenge.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I agree. We've built an outdoor classroom. Actually, our year 11s from last year, who obviously didn't sit more formal GCSEs because they did the teacher assessed grade, so they did their full internal assessments. But it sort of meant that they'd finished a little bit before they were going to be released into the wider world, for want of a better phrase. So we did 2 weeks work experience, and a lot of them wanted to work on site. And so, for legacy, they built an outside classroom.
That's amazing. It's also really nice that they wanted to be on site for their work experience.
Well, they didn't have a choice, but and what I saw last summer is actually as it was then built, I started to see geography lessons and English lessons and some of the year 6s and year 5s going out there and using it because it was comfortable, because it was outside. Yeah. But actually, it looks like a classroom. It's just outside. Yeah. Instead of sitting on plastic seats, you're sitting on logs. And, there was an element of creative writing that was happening. There was an element of different parts that teachers were starting to do. Yeah. And I suppose I only saw 3 or 4 different teachers doing it. And again, it's building confidence in teachers taking their children outside.
And I guess the more teachers that do it and talk to their peers about it, the more people will start to do it.
I think so. And maths is the one, that's the challenge, isn't it? Getting a maths lesson outside. And
yes. Yeah, because all I can think of is angles. There's probably more to maths than angles.
I learned so. We had a company come round to do some work with us a couple of weeks ago. And I asked that question because I said, look, I want to use our site more.
Yeah.
And how do you go about it? Because I can't see how maths might,
fit in.
Fit in, for want of a better phrase. And they said, well, there's loads of different ideas. So they said, for example, and I might get this wrong now, so I'm going to get Chris. So, for example, if you look between your legs at a tree,
Yeah.
and you look between your legs, and the moment you can see the top of the tree, so once you've got yourself in the right position,
Yeah.
if the moment you see the top of the tree, you are exactly the same distance away from the base of the tree as the tree is tall.
I have heard that before. Yes.
Oh, okay, so
yeah.
it makes that. And I was like, well, I never knew that. And all of a sudden, when you're sort of looking at sort of measurements and things,
Yes.
you think, okay, there is angles, there is measurements, there's all
Yeah.
sorts of different key things you can use for different parts of the curriculum. So I just thought, actually, there's means and ways for every subject.
Yes, yeah, that does sound like it. And actually, yeah, as soon as you start thinking, you think, oh, well, there's still life and all sorts of different ways to do art outside. And yeah, actually, there's quite a few. Which I kind of covers. I was going to ask you about incorporating being outside into the curriculum, but we've just kind of spoken about that, really. When it does work, when teachers feel confident and they've found a way to kind of do it, what do you think are the benefits for the pupils of being outside?
Well, they're testing all sorts of different skills that they don't test inside. So, and children at different developmental stages, you know, when they're in reception, they're learning communication, they're learning sort of the fine motor skills.
Yeah.
So they're learning different things than they're learning when they're in years 9 and 10. But what you can just see, and it sounds daft, but you can see if a child's learning. You can just see when you open a classroom door. You can see if they're engaged
and paying attention.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get that. You can sort of sense an energy when they're coming in from a lesson that they've just loved and they want to tell you about something. And that's the same feeling whether you're indoors or outdoors.
Yeah.
But certainly when I go down to our early years, our reception, our year 1 sort of area, you can just feel the energy coming off these children as they're playing outside and they're talking with each other. There's mud kitchens, there's sort of a speaker's chair, there's different things that those children need, and they're communicating, and they're communicating with each other in a way that if they're stuck inside all the time, they wouldn't be able to do that. So that's a huge thing, and it's the same as they get older. And one of the things that I really like about where we are as a school is when the weather's nice, we have playtime or lunch break, whatever you want to call it, out on what's called our front lawn.
Okay.
And you've always got staff on duty, but you can just see the way in which the children play in a really open, sort of free play space.
Yeah.
And the way they communicate, the way they work together. And I've never seen it in another school, and it may be because we're a small school, but there's a football game going on with year 7s playing with year 11s, and it doesn't seem to matter. And I
was just about to ask about that, because I think often when we think about forest school or kind of outdoor ed in schools, we think about primary age kids, but I was just going to ask about the kind of the secondary age, like 12 upwards. We often see a drop off in our groups with older teenagers. Whether you kind of find that they still want to be outside and they're still finding it a good way to engage and be interested.
You've got yes, I think so. You've got different mechanisms to attract them because
they're not playing in the same way. Obviously, I'm guessing you don't see many 15-year-olds in the mud kitchen.
Not as many, no. Although not none. I think there are different things, you know. So one of the things I wanted to do at my school was, I remember, you know, Duke of Edinburgh or Exmoor Challenge and 10 Tours, and that's some of the very similar skills which you're picking up in forest school in terms of team working and building leaders and survival and things like that. And one of the things that you know, I've seen happen in the last 18 months is our children interested in getting involved in that, and it's one of the things that I wanted to make sure we had in place in the sort of my first year in the school. And we've gone from sort of the foundation steps to now in the Exmoor Challenge we've had to request 2 more teams because we've got too many people signing up, and we've got 10 tours teams that are going out now, and you know, you just sort of think that's what those children want, because they value the opportunity. And in saying that, yes, it's serious because you're navigating, you're working with your friends, you're camping, you know, it's the survival element, exactly the same skills as forest school. And I think we do see that. We do offer forest school to all of the children. And I think one
the kind of traditional forest school, you mean, like the lighting fires, doing whittling, that kind of thing? Yeah.
Well, interestingly saying that, one of the things I think we were quite reserved in the beginning because we were starting something. So we've got the training now for our forest school leaders, and we needed to make sure that was in place before we were going to to offer it as part of the curriculum. But I think even in that sense, our forest school leaders were quite reserved in what was being delivered in the early stages. And a lot of the children were saying, we want to do the whittling, the lighting fires and stuff. And that took time, but now that's sort of starting to build in. You can see...
confidence for the leaders was that they needed.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit scary giving sharp knives to small children if you haven't done it before.
Exactly. Yeah. But again, because they've worked with the outdoors group and they've seen it happen, they've seen it work, and they're all really quite well read on what the benefits are. So that every class has it, but we also do intervention groups as well, and they can sort of see the benefit that has on a child's confidence, on them understanding who they are, and they've got to do it.
Are they out all year round as well?
Well, when it's not too windy.
When it's not too windy, when the trees aren't falling down.
Yeah.
We've kind of talked about the benefits for the pupils, but for the staff leading the sessions, obviously I know we've talked about them needing the confidence to take learning outside. Are there benefits to them? Do you kind of see an impact on their... I was about to say behaviour, but that sounds a bit patronising, but do you see an impact on the staff when they're back within the school building having done some stuff outside? Or is that hard to say?
If I look at the forest school leaders we've got, I think every person who's involved in education generally should have career CPD development, professional development that gives them something to try and aspire to be. And for our 3 forest school leaders, they seem so grateful that they've been given an opportunity, and it's not just an opportunity to tick, I've done that and I'll move on. They've been given an opportunity to practically apply what they've learned. So I really sort of feel that when I speak to them. They may be saying that because I put them on the course and they know that's the right answer. But
I bumped into one and they seemed very grateful and enthusiastic. That helped.
Good. What about the other 2?
I haven't met them
yet. So I think that's you can sort of see as they're taking the different groups, and one of them, or actually 2 of them, are very much primary school based before they took on this role, and one of them is secondary. And what's really nice is to see them working across the different phases. And again, it's, learning doesn't look that much different if you're in reception or you're in year 13. It's learning is learning, they you can sort of see them adapting to those challenges because they've got the tools to go on and do that. So for those guys, I see a sense of fulfilment in what they're doing. They are making a difference. I think for the other members of staff, again, it just depends on what subject area they're teaching. Interestingly, when some of the forest school leaders aren't in forest school, they are linked to some of the primary classes and some of the secondary ones. And I've started to see that a lot of the art, for example, is coming outside a little bit more. So that you can sit in front of our main hall and it's a beautiful old building and you sort of see them drawing it, or you can see them drawing bits of nature, and that wasn't happening before. And you sort of think, okay, that's nice. It's sort of filtering across a little bit.
Oh, that's awesome. And how is it being received by the parents, the children being outdoors more? Are they all pretty happy with it?
Again, any school has got such a wide range of parental preference. And I think some think it's great that we are doing forest school. Some would like it more. Some may well think actually they've just really got to focus on the on the nuts and bolts now as they get older. It's a really difficult one to answer. From my perspective, we're not finished. We haven't gone right. We've done outdoor education because they've got forest school on their timetable, or we do. I think we're always trying to develop it. And if anyone's listening to this and you sort of think you've got a picture of a school in your head, please go and Google our school, because you've got such a... I've just got so much space that I don't use. It sounds daft. When you've got other schools in inner cities that have a quadrangle and it's concrete.
You're in a lucky position.
I'm really
in a city with lots of space.
And I want to use that more. And I know that other schools in our trust, there's one in Croydon, doesn't have any outdoor space, but they're using the same company that I'm using to get the most out of the spaces that they've got, so that the children can be outside.
I was just about to ask about that, because I know that you've been in other schools in Devon which haven't had as much space. Do you think you'd have been as enthusiastic as you are? Does that make sense? Is it the space that inspires you, or do you think you'd still want to be getting to accessing the outdoors if you're in a more concrete, smaller kind of...
I suppose the difference is I was never the head teacher in the other school, so it's kind of like I get a little bit more of the final say now.
Yes.
Not all of it, but a little bit more. So I'd go back to the last school I was at, actually, and it didn't have as much space, but they did have the small spaces that they used, particularly with children who were struggling with the mainstream curriculum. They did a lot of sort of growing and planting, and because of the therapeutic nature of that. It wasn't forest school per se, but it was certainly outdoor learning, and they saw that benefit. And even though my last school is very much an inner city school in Plymouth, there was space where the children could play, and they love sport, and that's part of outdoor learning.
Yeah, definitely.
But again, because of the size of that school, there was 1,400 children there, and it wasn't, actually in acreage, I've got more space now.
Yeah.
For 400 than we had then.
Wow, that's mad, isn't it?
But again, it's had I been the head at that time, yeah, possibly, but it was just a secondary school, and I think what I'm trying to do is you sort of see the younger children outside more.
Yeah.
You can see how it's benefiting them, and like I said at the beginning, you can see what COVID's done.
Yes.
And that impact of they just need to be outside because they need to be able to, I don't know if that's the right word, recharge a little bit. Yeah. And that's influenced what I think a little bit more as well.
Well, I guess the biggest effect, I mean, obviously I'm not a teacher, but I'm a parent, on kids would be in the lack of socialisation with not socialisation, I hate that word, but those social interactions, that all that time indoors with just their family, like even if you've got siblings, it's not the same, is it, as playing with a big group of kids? You
really notice it. At the moment, you sort of see like year 1, year 2 age, and I'm not speaking about my school per se, I'm speaking about nationally, just because you talk to others, you go, there is a slight delay in, or because the formative years when, you're just talking to mum or dad or gran or your brothers and sisters, even for 6 months, that's such a, that's
massive
a
chunk
big
of their
percentage
life,
of their life to that point, and so much learning happens in those first 4 years. Before they even get to school age, and you do see those gaps develop. Yeah. And then you see the gaps develop later on where maybe if they haven't engaged in online learning as much, or they haven't, sorry, there's a cat meowing.
No, that's absolutely fine.
If they have, then that actually strangely has a mental health impact, because their self-confidence will drop because they're not where their peers are. Yeah. And you're fighting two battles then, because obviously you want their mental health to be strong and to be good, to engage in the learning. Yeah. But they feel worse about themselves because they're seeing their best mate, who has potentially done more in these lockdown periods, flying. Yes. And they're not. And that's another battle which schools have got at the moment, is weighing that up. And what you don't want to do in that case is, if you know that's the problem, you don't want to take that child out to give them more forest school lessons. No. Because that's not what they need.
No.
They need to be supported to do the catch up, which is going to help them feel better as they get through slightly older.
Oh, it's really interesting. I mean, it's also really sad. I was going to ask about how much of a priority it is for you, but you've already kind of spoken about how this is just the beginning for you and you want to develop it further. What kind of things have you got in your mind on the horizon? You said you've consulted with this company recently. Was that just on how to incorporate maths, or was that
No, it's that they it's our trust have employed them across all of the schools, so they come and do an exploratory visit.
That's really good of your trust.
Yeah, it's really exciting, and we've got 3 schools in the southwest, in Bristol and Frome and us, and we've all got quite unique settings in terms of the sites that we occupy. Yeah. And on the whole, we've got outside space and we want to use it. Yeah. But again, some of the other schools are either new builds or they're in very urban areas when they don't have that luxury. So, what really want to sort of focus on over the course of the next 1, 2, 3 years is that teacher development. It's adding that string to the bow. It's building confidence in, if you want to teach something in history, for example, actually it's okay to go outside and do it. If children are writing, yes, children are still going to have to write, they're still going to have to do it. Yeah. How can you incorporate what you're trying to put across outside?
What happened to your history lesson outside?
I was just went for a walk. What we were trying to look at I'll go back, is we were looking at, in history you look at evidence, where something's come from,
Yes.
if it's reliable,
Okay.
if it's not reliable. And it's just quite a sort of a foundation lesson,
Okay.
as in foundation in terms of secondary. So
Yes.
you're looking at those core skills, so
Yeah.
they're getting the terminology across. So we were looking at the old building of where they were studying.
Okay.
So we were trying to unpick evidence about what it was saying, and
Okay.
then going out and testing it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but it when you do the feedback, you think, they went for a walk, didn't they? I don't think they quite got as much out of it as I wanted. But maybe that's the planning, isn't it? And that's coming back to how I can support teachers feel confident to do that.
Yes, yeah. Also, to be fair, children aren't always very good at telling you what they've done with their day, is it?
Oh, yeah, but
you know.
I
was trying to be generous, Phil.
No, I graded my lesson. It wasn't good.
Well, do you know what? I was going to ask again about my last question that I'd written down for us was about doing outdoor education in a school of all ages and whether you had certain year groups in mind. But you've kind of already spoken about that. It sounds like your older year groups are still getting outside just as much as younger ones, even if it's through these kind of more challenging type things instead.
They are, but I think...
I mean, do you think the priorities of GCSE, it gets to a point where actually you've just got to be inside and get their heads down to get through those kind of last 2 years?
There's a lot on the curriculum. There is a lot on any key stage curriculum. And we follow discrete subjects, so we teach science.
Discrete, did you say?
Yeah, so we teach, so in primary,
yeah,
we teach science, we teach history, we teach geography. Some primary schools do topic-based approaches.
Okay.
But we teach discrete because we kind of feel it's useful if the secondary teachers and the primary teachers are working on the same language within that subject.
Okay.
It just seemed to make sense for us, and I think more primary schools now follow that model.
Okay.
And I think there's a huge opportunity for the older children working with the younger children.
Working together, yeah.
Or not. But even so, the national curriculum is so full.
Yes.
And obviously as they go on to their GCSEs, that there's a lot of memory that they've got to process and remember. And there's a phrase now which you hear a lot in education, just called cognitive load. If you keep throwing too much at children, they won't remember it.
No.
And the skill of teaching is building retrieval, building going back to that quality of education, how your curriculum is mapped together to make sure that children
are actually
feel
absorbing,
confident in what they're building. So it's not that you're doing the same again. So one of my first sort of probably weeks or months in, actually must have been second term because we were open fully. I went into a year 4 and they were doing 1066 as a history teacher. You go, well, hang on, they do that in year 7. But actually, what we fall into the trap of doing is just doing the same again. Yeah. And that's not what it's supposed to be. It's about building on those foundations that they've got and then mapping that together. And if you do that properly, you've got more flexibility.
So I'm guessing you could do 1066 twice, but there'd be a lot more to learn at a higher level? Or
well, it's what you're looking at, isn't it? So there's no point doing This Is Why William won in year 4.
No.
I'm sorry, I'm assuming that people are listening know what that is. I'm sure they do because they've done it twice in year 4 and year 7. But it's building on... it's maybe so they've got the context of what 1066 looked like. Yeah. So when they're in year 7, well, have a look at maybe what about the religion or what about the crime and punishment. Yeah. So they've got you're building on that. Yes. And then you're sort of creating a sort of this spiral. So as they go up to do crime and punishment in year 11, they've had that journey and they're confident with that time period. Is how we would like to develop our curriculum over time, and that's about teachers having time to talk, and then they can work out where they can fit in. Actually go back to 1066, there's a great deal of learning opportunity there, because thinking about, if you've got a hill, Harold was on the hill, William was at the bottom, reenact it. Yes. Do you know what I mean? That's, and that happens quite a lot actually in secondary schools, but there's a great opportunity to take that classroom-based activity, right, write me an essay, whatever, but actually before we do that, let's go outside and model it, and let's
and I'm guessing also in terms of that cognitive load that you've just mentioned, if they're spending even like 5 minutes going outside to do that, or 10 minutes, however long it takes to rally a class, that might help kind of with the processing and the absorption.
The more ways you can process the same information, the better chance it's got of sticking. And that's again another reason why just going outdoors,
even if it's just for a little bit,
even well, everyone needs sensory breaks.
Yes,
and I think that's something we haven't really touched on in terms of either children with SEN or actually not. Children need breaks.
Not back to back.
Not back to backs, and actually anyone's memory doesn't, or attention span, it varies, but it doesn't go more than 20 minutes, really, if we're being honest. So how you can incorporate those breaks within that, even the the most driven children who are focused on their GCSEs, they're gonna
burn out a bit.
They're gonna burn out, but that period just before lunch when you're trying to drill in Pythagoras theorem to them, they're not getting it because they've had a morning of it.
Yeah.
So it's how you can then build in what's happening, of course, throughout the rest of your day, I suppose.
Awesome. Just before we finish up, in terms of guidance you get from like Department of Education and Ofsted and all that kind of stuff, do they ever mention like utilising the outdoors or forest school or anything like that? Like, is there anything from the government about this kind of thing that we've been talking about, or
there might be, I just don't know about it.
Or do you know what other schools in your area are doing? Like, are other people on
there
their radar?
There are some really good sort of. We got something through very recently from another primary school nearby where we are, and you think, oh, that's a really good idea. Let's see how we can tap in to those to those sort of things that they're doing. And obviously working with the outdoors group has given us that indication of how that forest school can really help your children who are struggling but also not struggling, and how that can be for everybody. There is starting to be, but my general feeling is post-lockdown everyone's looked inwards at their schools just to try and get some continuity going. We've had 2 lockdowns, we've had high staff absences, and what's the first thing that's going to go if you've got all your teachers out? Let's stop the outdoors. Let's keep the school open for now. And that has been all of our challenges in education across the country. In the term before Christmas, the autumn term, was the most difficult I've ever known.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
And I've heard it so many times from other people. That
just that combination of factors that we've spoken about.
Yes, because obviously the COVID guidance changed frequently throughout that term. Staff got it, I got it, everyone's had it once. We're on round 3, I think, now. And you want to keep the school safe, staff are off, and the children still need someone to be taught by, and I'm really grateful that we've not had to do what some schools have had to do and close completely for short periods. But
I've heard about some schools where like a whole year group's been sent home, so it's like on Mondays it'll be year 1 aren't in, or that way to
this on rotation.
On rotation,
happens quite a lot. So I am grateful in that sense, but the flip side is when you're looking at your plan in the morning and you go, right, I've got so and so and so and so taking forest. Well, actually, if they're in, I can, because you need 2 people out in the woods.
For safety.
So there's been an element of that, and that's just unfortunate. But it doesn't mean that the teachers can't take their classes out. It's just the extra things we're trying to do.
Cool. Oh, thank you so much for giving up some of your Easter holiday to us.
It's all right.
I'm going to finish by asking you 3 questions, and I know that the first one is probably a bit mean to a busy head teacher, but how do you relax?
Well,
in the 2 minutes that you might squeeze in.
How do I relax? I started to do a silly challenge. I did the 7. Hang on, I've got to do the maths right now. It's the 75 hard challenge last year.
Yes.
Where you'd have to do 2 minutes of hang on, I can't talk now. I'm on holiday. 2 lots of 45 minutes of exercise a day.
Which is a lot to fit into the day.
It's so I had to get up really early. But I felt quite a lot of benefit from doing that. So you have to do it for 75 days. And then obviously day 75 finished and I stopped and went back to my old habits. But I've started...
Good to see it work.
Yeah. I could say I've done it and I've ticked it. But I've started to re-engage in that now. As I take the dog for a run every morning, and that sounds daft. It doesn't relax you, but it sets you up nicely for the day. I obviously have a lovely family who I'm not sure they're relaxing. But you spend time with your family. You sort of cherish the weekends. You cherish the holidays. I'm not much use to anyone during the week, and I think that's just part and parcel.
That's what it is at the moment. What are you reading or listening to right now? I'm guessing you don't have much time to read, but maybe you listen to stuff in the car while you drive in.
I do listen to podcasts. This is kind of a phenomenon. When you're out running, if you've got a podcast going, I find that really...
Yeah, that's what I do.
Really helpful.
Run while podcasting.
So I've got... in the winter, I really like listening to cricket podcasts because it makes me think of the summer. So I'm literally just listening to people talking about cricket. So there's the BBC ones. There's the couple of their Test Match Special and the Nobles cricket podcast, which I quite enjoy. I listen to I can't remember now. Parenting Hell, which is obviously
Josh Widdicombe,
and
I've forgotten the other one.
Rob Beckett.
That's it.
And you can see. So our children are a bit older than theirs, but having lived it, it's just. It's the same for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah.
Being a parent. So that's nice, just listening to those. I'm not really... Reading takes... For my work, I have to read quite a lot of different things. And it's not that I find it really interesting, actually, and I think the science around learning at the moment is fascinating. It doesn't relax me. I think podcasts certainly do.
Yeah, podcasts do more, yeah. And finally, I know that you're a bit outdoorsy, or quite outdoorsy. Why is being outdoors important to you?
Well, I was born in Exeter and I've grown up in this part of the world.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends moved away as soon as we'd finished and they went off to do the London thing, and I didn't, because I just think this is such a beautiful place to be, and why would you ever want to leave it? And having spent today on Dartmoor, the afternoon on Dartmoor, you kind of just appreciate how amazing it is and just awe-inspiring it is. And when we visit different places, we've been fortunate enough to visit different countries and seeing the different environments, the different climates. You're just so grateful that you've got that space.
Yeah.
It takes your mind off things.
Yes.
It creates a sense of perspective often.
Yes.
And now, thanks to my wife, I'm dabbling in sea swimming as well. So all of a sudden, I'm completely outdoorsy, which I never used to be. So
awesome.
It's all good.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, no, I've really enjoyed it. And have a good rest of your holidays.
I will try.
Hope you don't work too much. A big thank you again to Phil Arnold, head at the Avanti Hall School in Exeter, for taking some time to talk to us today about his thoughts and experiences of outdoor education. I really enjoyed talking to him, and I hope that you out there enjoyed listening to our conversation. As always, please don't forget to rate the podcast, subscribe and share it with your friends so more people can find us. And please come back in a fortnight for our next conversation. Thanks for listening.